Hi there, welcome to my channel. This is Imaneo, and as you know, in this series we are implementing a game using Flutter and Flame game engine, and it is called Flappy Dash. So this is the 11th episode, I think. I know it is getting too long and I'm going to wrap it up as soon as possible. The point is that I wanted to explain everything and cover everything, and that's why I just separated the episodes. And yeah, so in today's episode, we are going to take a look at a backend solution. So it is called Nakama. It is a product of the Heroic Labs. So one of them is Nakama, the one that we are going to use. It is open source, so you can bring up the instance of the backend in your own server, and also you can integrate the client SDK. Then you can connect these two together. And now I'm going to show you the features that it has. First of all, it has a great admin panel. So as you see, you can check the status of the server. You can do the user management, for example, add another admin or something like that. You can check the configuration and so on and so forth. So it has some features. For example, it has leaderboard feature, which is something that all the games needed. And also it has the match concept. So it is like a group of players can join together and play real time. So it supports that, and also it allows you to write your own custom functions. I mean, it has most of the things that you need for your game, and it has a lot of things under the hood and built in. Yeah, so as I said, it is open source. It supports real-time multiplayer, and they can compete together. And also, yeah, so it has, for example, chat. They didn't mention it here, but it has group. For example, you can define a clan concept or group concept, and the players can join together and they can chat together. And yeah, it works very well. And it has clients for example, Unity, Godot, Steam, and Java, and also for Flutter. So if you search Flutter Nakama, you will see that we have a SDK here, and it is version 1.1.0, and it allows you to connect to the backend that you implemented. For example, here it connected to the local host, but you can have your own server. Yeah, so you define the port, and then you will have access to the features. For example, it has authentication, it has session management, so you can create some sessions, and then you are able to use the functions that you have in your backend. And yeah, you can initialize a socket and so on and so forth. So we are going to take a look at it later, but for now, I'm just going to implement the backend. I mean, in this episode, we are not going to work much on the client. We are going to work on the backend and bring up a server that has the Nakama inside it and expose the backend or the APIs to the client that we have. Okay, so to get us started, I'm gonna open the documentation for Nakama. Yeah, so in the left side, you see that we have install. So I'm gonna click on it, and you have some options to install it. For example, if you want to install it on Linux, you need to do these. And if you want to install it on Windows, you need to do these steps. And also it has the Docker installation. So you just need to copy paste this logic or this code that is a Docker compose, and then it brings up it in a virtual environment in your server. And then you can expose the ports to the outside of the server, and then our client can connect to the backend. So I'm gonna use the Docker Compose way because it is much easier than others. First of all, I'm gonna open the DigitalOcean or any kind of server provider that you might use. You just need to have a VPS or a server, then you can install the Nakama inside it. Okay, I just logged into the DigitalOcean, and we can just create our droplet. But before that, I just want to let you know that we have marketplace here, and here you can find different softwares that you can install them on the servers by default. So if you search for Nakama, you see that we have the Nakama installation here. But the point is that it is too old. For example, it is 3.12.0, and if you check the Nakama GitHub, you see that the latest version is 3.23.0. So it's the older version, and that's why I'm not going to use it. But if they update it, you can just create a Nakama droplet, so it installs it by default and you are ready to go. So let's create a droplet. I'm gonna choose Amsterdam, so the server is going to be in Amsterdam. Then I'm going to choose the Ubuntu. It is selected by default and the version is good. I'm not going to change it. 24.04, and then I'm going to choose the regular because we don't need to have a heavy server, we just need to have something that just works, and I'm gonna choose the basic configuration. And yeah, so here you have the option for SSH key and also password. SSH key is a secure way to connect to the server. I mean, you can either use SSH or password, but in this case I'm using SSH key. So I just provided my public key. As you see, this is my public key. This way I can connect to the server easily. So if you don't know what SSH is or how can you connect to the server, I suggest you to watch a video about it and then watch this video. But I'm going to talk about the concepts shortly. I'm not going to get deep into it. If you want to know more, you can search and there are a lot of videos, but I'm using SSH key and it is already provided here. And I need to have one droplet and I'm gonna name it Flappy Dash test. Yeah, so I think we are ready to go. I just click on the create. Yeah, it's trying to create the server. We need to wait. Great, so now we have the server ready. It is just created and the IP address of the server is this one. I'm gonna copy it and I think the default username is root. So let me check it. I'm gonna open the terminal here and I'm gonna zoom a bit. Okay, I hope you can see it. So I'm gonna write SSH root @ the address of the server, and if everything is correct, it just connects to the server. So let's see, it wants to add the fingerprint. I'm gonna write yes. Okay, so we have just connected to the server. As you see here, I can write commands on the server that we have. So it is not in my local machine anymore. We are on the server, and yeah, for example, if you write ls, there's nothing here. ls shows the directories and files that you have here. So let's create a directory. I'm gonna write mkdir. So it's gonna create a directory for us and I'm gonna name it Nakama. And if you write ls again, you see that we have a directory called Nakama. So let's go into it. Okay, now we need to copy paste the code that we had here to be able to install it using Docker. By the way, there are two configs. The first one is Postgres and the other one is Cockroach. They are different databases and I'm not familiar with this one and I don't know how it works, and that's why I'm gonna use the Postgres because it is something that I'm familiar with. I'm gonna copy paste the code and then I will create a file called dockercompose.yml. So let me create it. We can write nano docker compose.yml. So with nano you can create or edit a file in the server or in your Unix based system. I'm gonna copy paste the code. Okay, so now I just copy pasted everything here. So let's check what we have here. The first one is a Postgres. So it's the database and the container name is Postgres. It's going to use this image and this is the database name. This is the password. I'm just going to leave the defaults because it's not important to have a secure server for test. But for production, I'm gonna write a secure password here. And this is the volume that it is using. So this way, whenever you stop the Docker and run it again, the file is persisted in this location. Yeah, so it exposes these two ports, 8080 and 5432. And also it maps the ports that we have inside the Docker and what we have outside of the Docker. So this way it just maps the ports together. It's the same number. And for the health check, there's a command and I'm gonna leave it as default. And then we have Nakama. So this is the server that we have. So it's going to use this image. So it is 322. As you see, the latest version is 3.23, but I'm gonna use 3.22 as it is here. I'm not going to change it. And here you see that it just executes the migrations, and then it just runs the Nakama, and it's the name, it's the database address. As you see, it is using the localhost with this port because it is inside the same Docker Compose file. And yeah, so it just depends on the Postgres. And then we are mapping the Nakama/data to the root directory of the Nakama where the Nakama is running. And this way we can just write our custom logic and integrate it into the Nakama that is running inside the Docker. And also here we have these 3 ports, so 7349, 7350, 51. So these are the ports that the Nakama exposes. The first one and the second one is for app connection, and the third one is for the admin panel that we have. So that's why we have 3 different kind of ports. I think this is for the normal REST or HTTP requests, and the other one is for gRPC because it is using gRPC for the communication between the client and the backend, and because it is very fast when you have a lot of back and forth with the backend and also other clients. So it uses gRPC for the real-time communication, and also it has the health check. Yeah, so I'm gonna write it with Control O in my machine. And if you check, you see that we have docker compose.yaml here, and using the cat command you can just see the content of a file. So let's see the content. Yeah, as you see, it just prints the content, and we are pretty sure that the file is correct. Okay, so let's check the next step. Yeah, so we just need to change the directory to Nakama and write docker compose up. First of all, we need to install the Docker, and after that we need to install the Docker Compose because they are different. And yeah, so for Docker, I just copy pasted this link. I will put the link in the description, but it is just the installation. If you search for it, you can find it. Yeah, so I'm just going to copy this code and just paste it in the server that we have. And it says after this operation, this amount of disk will be used. Do you want to continue? I say yes, for sure. Okay, so it is done, and then we need to run this command. I mean, this one just adds the Docker repository, but this one installs it. I'm gonna copy it and run it here. Okay, again, it asks a question and I just wrote yes. Okay, now it is finished, and let me clear the screen. And after that, you can verify the installation by this command. So let me run it. Yes, it is installed successfully. So we got this message. And after that, we need to install the Docker Compose. I'm just going to open it. Yes, this is the other link that I'm gonna put it in the description. And we can just run this command. I'm gonna clear the screen and run it. Nice. So now we have the Docker Compose ready. It doesn't have anything to test it, but I think we are ready to go. And let's get back to the documentation that we have here. Yeah, we just need to write Docker Compose up. So let me run it, Docker Compose up. If you run it, it tries to download the images and runs the Docker Compose file that we have. So let's wait. Okay, so it seems it is started successfully. It is saying that startup done. By the way, these are the logs from Nakama, and here you see that these are the logs from Postgres. And yeah, so as you see in the logs, it says that the API server gateway for HTTP is 7350, for gRPC is 7348, and for console or for the admin panel it is 7351. So I'm just going to copy the IP address, and then I'm going to use this port to connect to the admin panel. What was the IP address? It's here, and I'm gonna write it here. Yes, as you see here, we are in the Nakama admin panel, but we don't have the user password here. I think we have it in the Docker Compose file that we have. Okay, so it is not here. Let's continue the documentation. Yeah, it says that you can connect to the console by 7351 port. And yeah, so the default credentials are admin and password. So we can just use these two to connect to the server. I'm going to write admin password and let's log in. Yes. As you see, we just logged into the Nakama server or Nakama admin panel. And here you see the nodes that you have. For example, if your game is too big, you have a lot of users, you can add the nodes and these are connected together and you can just increase the capacity of the server. In user management, you see that you can create a new user, for example, and yeah, this is the role. For example, you can add another administrator. In the configuration, you can just see the configs that you have. You cannot edit them here. You can just define it in the file in the server, but here you can just see them and they are all the default values that we have. And here we have the modules that we have. As you see, we don't have anything at the moment. It supports Go, Lua, and JavaScript. So for example, you can write your own custom logic. If you want to add a specific widget for your game, you can just write it in JavaScript or any kind of language that it supports, and then you can integrate the function that you have in the server. And here we have the accounts. By the way, this is the default account that Nakama creates, and this is the system user somehow. And yeah, this is a special ID that it has. For example, when you write something to the database from your server, it's gonna set the owner of the data using this user ID. So this is a special user ID that you have. And you can have the display name, you can have the location, username, time zone, and yeah, and also you can have some custom properties. For example, you have a concept called level, so you can just write something like this here, and then you can have access it using the app. And then you have the authentication methods here. You can integrate Steam, you can integrate Google, Apple, and also the normal user email and password. And it supports friends, so you can have a bunch of friends in your account. You can talk with them, you can have a group with them. So here you can have multiple groups with different friends that you have. And also you have wallet. So this is a concept that is useful, for example, when you have gems in your game or coin or something like that you want to keep track of it. You can use wallet, and it supports transaction. So whenever you have parallel nodes that are working with the database, you can write transaction to make sure that it works and you don't have the race condition issue. And also here you can have the purchases, subscription, and the last one is the storage. So in storage you can have some collections, and inside that you can have some data. So it is for more complicated data that you have, you want to organize it, you want to have some structure for it, you can use storage or collection. And yeah, so here you can check the groups that exist in the server. Here you can check the storage that is general in the server, and here you can see the leaderboards. As you see, we don't have any active leaderboard yet, but we are gonna create it for the next episode. And here is the chat messages, and also here you can see the current matches that are active at the moment. And here you can check the endpoints that you have in the server. For example, here you can check all the endpoints. We can check the get account. So here you need to write the ID that you want to check. I'm gonna write the ID that we have here. And when you send a request, you get the response. So this is the ID, this is the language tag, this is the metadata, and this is the wallet, so they are empty. And yeah, this is useful for when you want to debug something and make sure that something is working well. And yeah, so that's it for the backend. I'm just going to install it in the client that we have. So we are on branch part 11, and I'm just going to run it in my macOS. Okay, so now it is running, and I'm just going to install the Nakama dependency. What was that? Flutter Nakama. Okay, so I just opened the other link. As you see, it's here, and here they have a sample project and they explained the Nakama based on the sample that they have here. For example, in the Dart Flutter section, you see that you can just add it, you can just create a socket, you can authenticate device using this part of code, you can, for example, close the connection, you can authenticate with your device. You see, you have a lot of samples here for different parts of the game. For example, here, joining dynamic rooms. It is something that they explained here with the sample code. And yeah, so you can just take a look at the codes that they provided here. Or for example, for the match, you can use this code to create a match and let others join the match. And yeah, so for now, I'm just going to install it. I'm gonna write flutter pub add Nakama. Okay, so let's check the PubSpec file. We have Nakama, it's correct. Okay, now we can have the initialization logic. For example, in our game qubit, when you open the game maybe. So I'm gonna create the constructor here and initialize Nakama. Okay, so it's gonna be called on the constructor, and now we can have the client. At first we need to have a reference to the client that we have, Nakama client. I'm just going to paste it here. I'm gonna import it, and in the host I'm gonna copy paste the host address that we have here. Okay, so this is the IP address that we have for the server, and these are the default ports for the gRPC and for the HTTP. And this is the default server key that we have. So as I said, in the real production app or game, I'm gonna change it. But for now, as it is a test server, I'm gonna leave it as it is. And then we can just check what we have from the client. As you see, we have get account, we have add friend, add group. And as you see, most of them need the session property. So for example, add friends need the session, get account needs it. And yeah, so to do that, at first we need to authenticate. So as you see, we have a lot of options for authenticate. We have authenticate with Apple, email, device, Facebook, and I'm gonna use the simplest one, authenticate using device. So here you can just write the device ID. I'm gonna write something for test here. But in the real production, you can check the Android ID or something like that from the OS. And also we can have the username. For example, I'm gonna set it Iman and we can also provide some variables. I'm gonna leave it empty for now. And as a return, we have a session. So let's store the session. Okay, so let's make it async, and here we have the session. So let's print something to make sure that everything is good. Session dot token, yes, the main token. And let me run it again. Okay, so because it is already created, I think we need to do a hard restart. Let me close it and open it again. Okay, so we have an error here. It said error connecting, socket exception, connection failed. I know the issue. We need to add something in one of the macOS files. I think it is inside the debug entitlements. Yeah, so let me search it. Yeah, it is this one. So we just need to add this code to the debug entitlement that we have, and let's run it again. Nice. So as you see, we have the session. So it means we are connected to the backend that we have, and we just got the session. And let me open the backend here. Where is that? It's here. And if we take a look at the accounts, you see that we have a new user. You see we have a new randomly generated user ID here, and the username is Imaneo. Also, we have the display name, and in the authentication, you see that we just have the device ID, and it's a list of devices. And yeah, so we just connected to the server, and let's see what other functions do we have here. For example, we can say client dot create group. So this way we can just create a group in the system, and I'm gonna name it Flutter devs. And what other options do we have? Let's see. We have avatar URL, so it's an image that we have for the group that we are creating. It has a description, it has the language tag, max count, and open, that is true by default, I think. And yeah, I'm just going to add the description. Okay, so as a result, it returns a group object. So let's await and have a group reference here, and we can just print something, group.id. So this way we can just have the group ID, and let's run it. Yes, as you see, the group is created with this ID, and if we go here, groups, you see that we have a Flutter devs group, and it has only one member, that is me. And yeah, so the point is that we don't have the create leaderboard or something like that in the client. So if you search for leaderboard, you see that we have delete leaderboard record. So it is not the leaderboard, it's the record that you have in the leaderboard. It just lists the records of the leaderboard. And I mean, these are the functions that you can use to manage a single record of the leaderboard. And if you want to create a leaderboard to let others to join and participate, you can create a custom function in the server. So for example, you can have TypeScript runtime. You can also have Go or Lua, but this documentation explained how to implement the TypeScript runtime. And you can go ahead and, for example, using this code, you can implement your own RPC function with your customized logic. And yeah, so here it explains how can you initiate or initialize the project, the TypeScript project. You can install the npm. So this is something that I'm not expert on it, but I could ask ChatGPT to help me to implement it and understand what is happening. But you can do the same. You can ask ChatGPT to help you to go through the steps. And yeah, so for example, when you run this command, it's gonna create this file. And yeah, this is the structure that you are gonna have. I mean, as you remember in the let me create a new one and do a SSH. Yeah, as you remember, we have Nakama, and inside that we have the Docker compose, and let me open it. As you see here, we have volumes that maps the data to something, and in the documentation, I remember they said something. Yeah, here they say that if you want to customize it, you can just change the volumes to this. So I'm gonna do this. So it just maps the /data of the Docker to the /Nakama /data that we have. So I'm not going to save it because it might break something. No. And yeah, so for example, you can create a data here. And now you can just create your files here to implement your own custom logic. And this way you can integrate the codes that you have here inside the data directory with the codes that are running inside the Docker file or inside the Nakama. And yeah, so you just need to go through the documentation here. As you see, it has the, for example, src, it has the files that are needed for the TypeScript. And yeah, so we have something here. It is the init module. So you can have some callbacks. For example, when the Nakama runtime is initialized, this is gonna be called. So this is the point that you can write your initialization logic. And for example, here you can write nk.create leaderboard. So this way you are able to create the leaderboard. Otherwise, you are not able to create leaderboard from the client. So that's the only way to do this. And yeah, so by the way, because this is not our main topic, I'm not going to get deep into it, but I just can show you the code that I have for the server. And yeah, so this is the source code that I already have for the Nakama that I have in the secured server. You see that we have a code like this. We have init module, and inside this callback I just logged hello world, and then I called the create main leaderboard, and inside that, as you see, we have the leaderboard ID, we have the authoritative. So this is something that allows everyone to contribute from the client side. So it is a security level. For example, if you want to make sure that everything is controlled by the server, you can make it true, and this way clients cannot modify something in the leaderboard directly from client. So this way you are gonna implement your own custom logic, and everyone has to ask the server to do something with the record in the leaderboard. But I just set it false because I want to modify it directly in the client. And yeah, for example, we have sort order, we have the operator. For example, I used best. And for example, you can use incremental when someone tries to add something to the leaderboard. It just increases the previous score. And yeah, for this one, I just used best because we want to keep the highest value or best score that you have, and we don't have any reset schedule. For example, you can set it to reset every day or every week or something like that. And then I just wrote nk, which is the Nakama runtime dot leaderboard create leaderboard ID, authoritative, sort order, and other properties that we have. And for example, you can have other methods. You can delete an account. You can, for example, group users add, group users delete. You can link an email to a user, and you have a lot of functions here. For example, if you want to write your own customized logic, you can use the functions. But for now, I'm just using the leaderboard create, and it's going to run it whenever the module is initialized. And as a result, I just moved it behind the console.flappydash.com, and this is the username and password that I have here. And yeah, so you see that in the leaderboard we have the main leaderboard because we just created it when the module is initialized, and we have the main leaderboard here. And in the next episode we can just connect to the main server that we have. This is the secure server that I just created, and we can just implement the leaderboard feature here. But if you want to do the same for yourself, you can just go through the documentation here to initialize the TypeScript in your server, and you can just write your own custom logic. And yeah, so I think we are done with this episode. We just implemented a test environment of Nakama, and in the next episode we are going to implement the actual leaderboard, so this way we can compete together. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe the channel, or share it with your friends. It motivates me to publish more videos, and stay tuned for the next video. Bye.